Yeah, sometimes the best episodes are like when you just turn the microphone on and you see what happens.
Well, it's quite the coincidence because I just turned the microphone on and now you're talking.
Perfect. Well, welcome. Good to see your face, Christian.
Good to be seen.
Oh, man. I can't even say that the week has been hard or difficult or long because it's, Monday?
It's Monday. I normally record this on Sunday.
Oh, yeah, normally Sunday. But so we're mixing things up a little bit. But we're gonna kind of do a short, maybe special episode today where we're gonna maybe, I can't even really say jump in or dive into, which I normally say on all the episodes.
You do.
I do. Father's Day, but we're certainly going to talk about it because you know what? If I remember right, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're a podcast about dads.
By dads, for dads, maybe with occasionally eavesdropping, wife or something.
And drinking whiskey with dads.
Yes. So we don't get too rambly.
I won't.
Today's podcast is special about Father's Day, and what are we drinking today before we get into the meat and potatoes?
Before we get into the meat and potatoes, and I like how you say that because now I want meat and potatoes, we are going to be getting into this whiskey, which is Wild Turkey 101.
We are the Old Fashioned Dad Podcast, seeking to love dads through the person and work of Jesus Christ, entering into tough conversations on faith, God's calling, marriage, parenting, sex, all while enjoying good whiskey. I'm Christian Bringoff.
And I'm Christian Harris.
Thanks for joining us.
Okay, so what do you think of the whiskey so far?
It's not bad. I mean, it's not too strong. It's pretty smooth. It feels like a good everyday drink.
Does it kind of feel like a hug, like a Kentucky hug?
Kentucky hug. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the longest time, Wild Turkey, when I got into the whiskey realm, which was mostly Scotch, there's always the brands and the labels that you kind of see on literally the lower shelf of the grocery store or liquor store.
Shelf.
Yeah, bottom shelf. And you're like, they're $20, they're $15, they're probably not good. And so you kind of, I know for me, I've definitely fallen victim to name recognition when it comes to whiskey labels. So like McKellen, Glenfiddich, or Fittich, I never know how to pronounce that, Glenfiddich, or Pappy Van Winkle in terms of like bourbon, Willet. And those are good whiskeys, but just because a whiskey has a higher price tag and has more name recognition doesn't necessarily mean that it's better. And just because a whiskey has a lower price tag doesn't necessarily mean that it's lower quality. So
we should do an episode on the psychology of pricing.
Ooh.
I mean, I've seen like lots of actual studies that did the blind taste tests and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, this is an amazing gourmet burger." Then it's like McDonald's,
yeah,
but they just put a big price tag on it to give people the impression that it was fancy.
Did they make the burger look a little bit nicer than what you'd get at the drive-thru?
I think so. I mean, it was pretty funny because they kind of duped people that were even like they're
like
professional taste testers that get paid for it, and just kind of saying, hey, there's a lot of psychology that goes into like whether or not something's actually good. And a lot of it has to do with how it's positioned, the price tag, kind of predisposition someone to think it's better quality because it's more expensive.
That would be a fun episode. I don't know how far we get into it before we abandon it, but I think we could talk for at least 5 minutes on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're taste testing whiskey, you probably take about 10 minutes before it gets sloshed. So.
I know for me, there's a ton of psychology in going to a McDonald's drive-thru at midnight. So
yeah, that's true.
Wild Turkey 101. So, gents and everybody that's listening to us, this is a solid bottle in my opinion.
Yeah.
I know that I'm a latecomer to the WT game, so many of you may already know the wonderfulness of 101. But Wild Turkey 101, 101 proof. But you don't really taste the. I mean, there's some heat there, but
it's not harsh or anything.
It's not harsh. And it's going with a barrel char number 4. So.
What does that mean?
It's kind of a deeper char in the barrel. So they're roasting the barrel from the inside out, and well, not inside out. Sorry, just they're roasting the inside of the barrel and charring it. And they have the different kind of grades. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't think I've ever seen anything over a 5.
So 4 or 5, pretty
Yeah,
deep char.
It's a deeper char, 4 and 5. So, char number 4 for Wild Turkey 101. Master distiller, Jimmy Russell. So, a lot of history with Wild Turkey. Not for me personally. I didn't have anybody in my life drinking Wild Turkey to the extent where they were pouring it on their cornflakes. But I'm happy to have discovered WT here. So we're going to talk about Father's Day today, I think, because that's going to happen. I think this week is if history's any guide.
Yeah. We're gonna release this one a little early, so drop it Friday before Father's Day, so it's hopefully relevant. Within a week of people listening to this, hopefully it'll be within a week of Father's Day. So.
And I like the word relevant because hopefully that's what we're going to be today when it comes to this issue and topic. Because I might have already said this, but I think we're a podcast about and for dads. Yeah, that's it. We're a podcast about and for dads.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So I didn't necessarily really want to come like uber prepared. Like we're going to give here's all the 4 points to be a better dad on Father's Day, or to make people appreciate you more on Father's Day, or whatever.
How to guilt more cards and gifts out of your family on Father's Day.
Yeah. But a question does come up for me. Did you have any traditions growing up when it comes to Father's Day?
I might have, but you ask my wife, and she'll tell you my memory is terrible. I actually don't remember most of my childhood, which might just be my mind protecting myself. I don't remember being particularly traumatic, but also wasn't a great experience.
We can do some therapy later after this.
It's good. It's good. We weren't big on traditions or celebrating holidays and stuff in my family, which was interesting when Jenny and I, my wife, came together, because her family was all about the birthday parties and the celebrating things, and mine wasn't. And so even to this day, we still kind of have that conflict of I don't know. To me, I just don't care that much, and to her, it's a big deal.
So it's a big deal for her to celebrate Father's Day and Mother's Day.
Yeah, cards and gifts on all the little holidays and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, even birthdays, for me, it wasn't a big deal. If I get something great, if I don't, I'm not expecting anything, especially as an adult, but she still kind of has this thing. Maybe a lot of people do. I don't know. I'm probably the weird one, but
you might be a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. So Father's Day doesn't have a ton of. It sounds like a ton of significance for you.
Yeah, not a ton.
For me, Father's Day, not necessarily being a dad, but growing up with a dad, always included the grilling of some kind of meat.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And then hand drawing. Honestly, just a really crappy card. I just can't even imagine my dad just being super excited. Though he was, though, I think. And that was kind of the thing about my dad that was really cool, weird, and interesting, is that he didn't necessarily want any gifts, but he'd always be go draw me a card. And it'd be the worst card that I could ever come up with. I would grab a piece of paper and scribble lines that look like people on it and color it in, and whatever, a sun would be there, and then you scribble across it, "I love you, Dad." And he would treat that like I gave him a $10,000 Rolex.
Sure. Which I'm sure made a big impression on you as a kid. Getting that
it does.
acceptance
Now
from
it
your dad.
does.
Yeah.
Now, reflecting back on it, but I was thinking to myself, man, have I ever gotten that excited about anything my kids have done for me that my dad did for me on those cards? Mm-hmm. I don't think so. Maybe I have. I don't know. My dad just he had this kind of way about him where he didn't really grow up with a great family. There was a lot of abuse in his family. So in these later years, he and I have bonded a lot more, and he just values families that love each other. And so I think that he always strived to do stuff that kept the family together, brought love together, and I think for him it was just I don't want to ask for anything other than let's just spend time together.
Sure. I think that's great, because I know for me, the things that mean the most to me are like that handmade gifts and cards for my son. Like those are the things I'm gonna hold on to. You know, I mean, like you could get a card with a well-meaning message and stuff, and have like someone's name at the bottom, and like that's nice, but it doesn't have the same like from the heart impact. I mean, even if your kid's only 4 or whatever, like they're still showing you that they love you in their capacity as a 4-year-old. You know.
No, you're right about that, because if I think about it now as an adult, I'll get cards from people, and I don't know, they might have spent 5 or 10 minutes in the Hallmark card aisle at the grocery store,
Sure.
picking out the right card that really, really spoke to me, and they wrote their name in it, and gave it to me, and I'm just like, I don't really feel inclined to hold on to this.
Sure.
This is the second I receive it, it's probably going to go in the shred pile.
Sure. It's a nice idea, but it's not something you're going to hold on to for sentimental value or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I go over to my dad's house now, and I go into his. He's a photographer, and he has a dark room, and I look on his wall, and he's got all these pictures of me and my brothers growing up through the different ages, and anything that we've drawn, anything that we've written, is just posted up there, and I don't know. To me, there's a lot of sentiment in that.
Sure. I mean, that's sweet. That's very sweet. Yeah. Not in like a sappy way, just like in a something to be cherished. Yeah.
Yeah. The grilling of the meat was always a tradition. The meat, I would have to say, sorry, Dad, if you're listening, was not that good.
It's overcooked.
Over or under is kind of where it landed.
Okay.
Yeah. And it just, or over salted.
Yeah.
And that was always kind of hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
he would always make a ton of meat, and he'd invite people over, and almost like in a motherly way, he would be like, well, you only had like a whole pot roast or a whole baby back thing of ribs. Eat more, your skin and bones. Eat. Dad, how much more do you want? Anywho. So that was always, and we're gonna do that because Father's Day is this Sunday, right?
We're recording this on the Monday before. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So, yeah, I'm gonna go over and I'm gonna probably stuff myself full of under or overcooked meat.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're able to do that. I mean, I don't know if I've ever gotten together. I mean, since being an adult, I've gotten together with my family for Mother's Day or Father's Day. I mean, my dad's not that far away, but he's out in Fall City, which is a suburb of Seattle, kind of. Probably spend more time with my wife's family in North Carolina. Fly there twice a year. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's family's complicated. So
Right? That's
yeah.
fathers especially, right?
Right.
One of the reasons why we started this podcast is to talk about that and maybe have an impact on that.
Yeah, hopefully be encouraging. I mean, my story a little bit is that the dad I actually call my dad is technically my stepdad. He adopted me when I was 4. So my biological dad is a real piece of work. He still lives back in the Midwest. So like.
Did he go out for a pack of cigarettes and just not come back?
No, I think my mom was. I think she was actually married to him for a short time. Or I don't even know. I don't even know if they were ever married, but I think it came to a screeching end when she got pregnant with me, and he wanted to abort me, and she basically, slapped him and left.
Dang.
So, fortunately, my mom decided to keep me.
I'm thankful because, at the very least, this podcast couldn't happen.
Who knows what this world would look like without this podcast?
Completely different landscape.
I know. So, it's, kind of dealing with the issues of having like a dad who wasn't really there growing up, and then, kind of hearing my mom's experience with things, and then whatever. I mean, while my dad, the one who adopted me, lives locally, even though my mom and him got divorced when I was 18, The year after I moved out of the house, they got divorced. There was never like a question of like, are you still my dad or not? Like, well, no, he's my dad, But he's not super like emotionally available. So like, as I was working through a lot of the stuff in my 20s, wanting to like spend more time with him and actually get to know him and stuff, like heart-to-hearts are just not something he does. You know,
Wasn't emotionally available.
yeah, and he's still not. So he's very kind of clinical and whatnot. So like any heart-to-heart attempt we've ever had has always been very disappointing for me.
Like you've initiated heart-to-hearts with him, and he's just not gotten it.
Yeah, I mean it's you know, he's usually uncomfortable. You know, and it just doesn't. You know, because I mean, at the core, what I wanted, you know, was him to like hug me and tell me he loves me, and that just never happened. It was always like some kind of intellectual conversation about how like, about whatever, you know. I'm just like, you're overthinking this, like.
You're overthinking that hug you want.
Yeah. You know, and so I mean that was obviously, you know, a lot of ebbs and flows of, you know, kind of working through that and that kind of stuff in my 20s, and even my wife and I talk about, like, I don't really remember my childhood very much. I have like little snippets of like fun times or scary times or whatever, but I don't have like this overarching like memory, I guess, of you know what it was like, if it was good, if it was bad. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that means, but
I mean, I won't try to diagnose anything.
yeah, you kind of diagnosed me live on the podcast.
Yeah. you could benefit from some Ativan. No, I'm kidding. That's tough, and I bet you. I mean, there's probably a decent number of men, fathers, husbands that are out there now that have similar experiences. You know, maybe not as bad as yours or way worse than yours. And I know that, like, when I come into Father's Day, I look at Father's Day as, like, I'm grateful for my dad. But I know that there's probably a lot of men out there that are, like, when they look at Father's Day, they're like, yeah, I don't give a shit.
Sure.
Like, my dad's a piece of crap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's unfortunately, you know, it seems like there's a lot more of that out there nowadays, which, you know, I mean, I think we've kind of talked about it, and, you know, I've been to some men's retreats and training and whatnot. You know, typically, whatever, you know, us as men, our experiences with our fathers, like, we mirror that to God. So if he's a great dad, like, okay, like, I get the, you know, loving father who cares for me. If they're a crappy dad, you don't really get the loving God dad relationship thing. Like,
yeah,
you distrust, you know, God being good.
You do kind of see God in kind of the lens that you experienced your biological father.
Right.
You know, absent father, absent God. Present father, present God.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point that you make.
So, which for a lot of people is a stomach block of, like, not really connecting to the gospel and to God of love. You know, like that idea of, like, a tender, loving, protective father, like, it's foreign to a lot of men, you know.
Yeah, what does that even mean? Like,
Right.
a lot of guys are like, my dad left at an early age, or my dad was present and then he up and cheated on, you know, my mom, and you know, created a whole new family somewhere else. Yeah. My dad was a product of an adulterous relationship. My grandfather, he went and set up shop. He was already married, had a couple of kids, and he was a traveling salesman. And he went back east and found a gal and had 4 more kids. And one of them was my dad, and the other 3 were my aunts and uncles.
Like, left your mom, or like?
No, stayed with.
So like in between sales trips, like, would have this other family.
Yeah, like the stuff that you see in movies.
Wow.
And then when he got found out, rather than end the relationship, well, okay, he did end the relationship, but he wanted to do right by now his new 4 kids and his mistress. So he moves them to Seattle on the same block that he lives with his wife and other 2 kids.
That's not weird at all.
No.
Wow.
And every time I revisit this, like, little chapter of our family history, I'm like, what in the what? I don't even get it. You know, and
I mean, what did your mom think about that? I mean, like,
What did my mom think of that? No, my dad didn't do that. Sorry, it's my grandfather. That
Oh,
did.
I got you. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry,
not my dad.
Generation removed there.
Yeah,
Okay.
apologize.
Okay, yeah.
Grandfather did that, and so this is like back in like the 40s, which I think a lot more affairs were happening. Well, a lot of affairs are happening now, but they're a lot more hidden, I think.
Sure, it's a lot easier to hide them.
Yeah, now it's like they're almost celebrated now.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, but so it's interesting to see, like, my dad could have easily gone the direction of, I'm just going to do it. He could have done what his dad did.
Sure.
Like, because when adultery and divorce are part of a family, and honestly, I didn't think that these two topics we would be talking about during Father's Day special right now, but okay. But when adultery and divorce are part of a kid's like upbringing, it kind of gets normalized.
Sure.
And so it's actually more weird when they go in the other direction and want to be dads.
Sure. Well, it's interesting you bring that up because, like, you probably have some actual, like, science and schooling to back up whatever your view is on this. But anecdotally, what I've seen is that people tend to respond, and just in life in general, either they accept the way they're brought up as normative. It's like, that's just how it is. That's just how the world works.
Yeah.
And so if there's, divorce and dysfunction and yelling like that, they carry that on kind of subliminally or whatever, like subconsciously. Or they swing 180 and they're like, I don't want to be like that. That was not a good experience. I'm going to be a different kind of dad or different, whatever. But what I've seen, even if you consciously do that and, like for me, I was, I think, the only Christian in my family for a long time, until my mom, became a Christian in her, 10 years ago or something. And so, while there's this active desire and attempt to, like, be a different husband, be available, to be a different kind of dad, there's still these, like, learned things, and for lack of a better term, let's call it generational sin, that carries on with you, even if you're fighting against it, that's been kind of a big struggle for me is, I never liked the generational aspect of, my dad being both dads being kind of emotionally distant. And so I'm super affectionate with my son. Tell him I love him all the time, try to be empathetic. And I also, like, my love language is, like, one of them is touch, so, like, whether it's my wife or my son, just kind of being close, and I think my son's the same way. And so while I've got that, there's still, like, my anger and inappropriate, yelling or shaming or whatever, which unfortunately was part of my childhood. I remember, like, just feeling done, made me feel stupid a lot. And so, like, I have to fight against that, and sometimes I don't even see it or realize it until Jenny points it out to me, and then I've got to, repent and and all that. But even doing that is something that I never saw modeled to me, this idea, like, you can make a mistake and you can repent and you can apologize and you can be humble about it. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to model that to our son. It's like, not this idea that, like, we're perfect and you need to be like us, but we need Jesus just like you need Jesus, and this is what it looks like when we mess up. But we've had to figure that all out. Jenny grew up with a Christian family, but I didn't, and so just kind of meshing that,
I think as dads we're mothers as well, wives as well, but I think specifically with dads, there's this task or responsibility that's placed on our shoulders to create a good legacy, and there's a lot of dads that just simply don't, and I think generationally there's been a lot of abuse that has been handed down to men, and they've passed it on to their sons, either being emotionally absent or physically abusive or all of that, really.
Sure.
And it has this systemic effect on the parenting that a father would end up giving to the next generation, and to me it's nothing but the grace of God that a father who comes from an abusive situation or an adulterous situation or a divorce situation would go 180 degrees from that, because
that's
I mean,
unnatural.
no, it's not. I mean, yeah, that's right. I think the natural normative thing, at least in that context, would be to, well, hey, I came from a divorce situation. That's always an option for me.
Sure.
I came from an adulterous situation. That's always an option for me. I came from an abusive situation. That's always an option for me. And so when a dad says, you know what, the abuse is wrong. You know what, I want to work through the hard stuff in the marriage with my wife so that I can be present, and I'm not always going to love her 100% fully the way that Christ loves me, but I want to work through that, and I don't want to commit adultery, and I also want to show up and be emotionally available. If a dad wants to do that, and that, to me, that's God's grace working in a father's life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for kind of speaking as far as like that experience always being an option for you, even if you're not like cognitively thinking of that. Jane and I, when we got married, I mean, we dated like a month and got married a month after that. So like on our honeymoon, we had known each other 6 months. I don't recommend doing that, but God was in it, so it all worked out. But one of the things that we did through our kind of rushed premarital class was make this intentional decision, like the D word. Divorce is not in our vocabulary. Doesn't matter how angry we get, we don't have a plan B. Like, God's big enough to make our plan A of being married and loving each other work.
That's it. It's just plan. That's all it is.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, you think about it, and like a lot of people, it's pretty normal for people to have a plan B. They're like, well, if it doesn't work out, then I'll just get divorced. I'll just do this. I'll just move on. I'll just have my backup. If it doesn't work out, I've got my college degree that I could, go back on. And that seems pretty normal in our culture. Like, women need to have a backup plan because what if the guy ends up being a shitbag?
And that often happens.
And unfortunately, it's also kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense of like, if you have a plan B, you're much more likely to take it than if plan A is the only option.
Funny
with both people, because I mean, it only takes one to make things not work out. But
when to that point, sorry to cut you off.
Well, speaking of nice knife,
while I'm holding the knife for all the listeners, I pulled out a knife.
I'm gonna stick you.
When I see couples that come into my office, I think I've said this before on previous episodes, but that want to come in to avoid divorce, they've always got kind of their fingers pointed out, saying like, well, they need to, he needs to change communication, she needs to change her behavior. They've got their list of the things that need to change, and those things need to happen, or those are the contingencies, I guess. Those things need to happen for the marriage to survive. And if obviously they don't see that sort of stuff happening, then plan B, divorce. And I always say to them, I was like, okay, great. I got to hear everything. I got to see the 30,000 foot damage survey, all that. Okay, I understand you're hurt. I understand you're hurt. If you want to stay in this marriage, you can't have a plan B. Like, if you want the marriage to reconcile, you have to say there is no other plan B. We're going to stay married. That's what it is. And I say that because, especially when it comes to counseling, is they're going to waste their time coming to counseling for marriage if one of them has kind of their foot out the door saying like, nope, divorce is still an option. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, the people, they don't want to commit to staying in and healing, so they're like, nope, we're going to divorce.
Sure.
Likely because they've had, they come from a family that has divorce in it and it's normal, and they're like, well, everybody else survived and it was fine, whatever. I'll just get remarried, or I'll just get in another relationship or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and that's because I mean, having a discussion about that, you really have to back up, like, what's driving the people individually and then collectively as a married couple. Like, why do you get married? Did you get married because you thought you'd be happier being married? Well, there's your problem. Like, if happiness, because I mean, culturally, at least in America, happiness is most people's goal. Comfort and happiness. Now, if that's your goal, marriage is not always going to bring that. It's actually going to be pretty difficult. And you're not always going to be happy.
You speak like you have wisdom on this.
But for whatever reason, we went into marriage knowing that. knowing that like happiness is not our ultimate goal. It's glorifying God. It's, you know, He brought us together for a greater good. You know, and so I think it really boils down to, you know, have you bought into, you know, the American dream, so to speak, of, you know, pursuing, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, I mean, I'm pretty patriotic. I love that stuff. But when you do that above God's calling for you, things aren't going to work out well. And happiness is very subjective, because if, you know, me, you know, hooking up with a 22-year-old hottie brings me happiness, I'm going to pick that over my wife and kids and, you know, whatever else. So it's a moving target, and it can change. While, you know, love, we went into it kind of believing, you know, biblically, like it's a choice. Like you make that choice, it's hard work, you work through it. God's in the middle, you know, you're both pursuing God, and therefore being drawn not only to each other but to God. You know, if each other's in the middle, like God's somewhere on the periphery, like you're not going to stay focused. You're not going to have your priorities where they're supposed to be.
No, that's like being a dad is a choice, right? You know, just like being married, just like being a husband is a choice. Sure. And it's not something that should be based on a feeling. And I think that's somewhat of what you're alluding to.
That's exactly it. If we're chasing feelings, those feelings are going to ebb and flow.
Yeah, and having faith in God is a choice. Trusting God's a choice. Showing up and being a dad and being a husband, going to your job is a choice. And so plenty of times where I don't want to go to my job, but I'm like, you know, I got to pay bills, and I, you know, want to be a good husband and provide and whatnot. And
I hear your boss is a real jerk, though.
Man, he is a slave driver. Gosh.
It's a problem with working for yourself.
What a tool. We're getting smoked out here.
Smoke in the face.
Yeah, so I love it when I hear stories about fathers who, you know, they come from these kind of jacked up situations, you know, and the statistics say they should probably continue in that, and they don't.
I mean, that's a miracle. I mean.
It's nothing short of a miracle, because everything says that they should, and so, like, I mean, even when I meet people that aren't necessarily men that aren't necessarily saved, but they're saying, you know what, I'm going to show up and I'm going to love my family, I'm going to love my kids, and I'm like, that, bro, that's the grace of Christ in your life. But I just think it's cool, and I think more dads should be celebrated for that. It's like you're doing the Matrix right now. I think more dads should be celebrated for that, and I think that's what Father's Day should be about, is dads that are willing to kind of break the family normative that they grew up with, especially if it was, you know, negative and destructive, and create a new legacy of like hope and love, especially, you know, if it's rooted in the gospel, rather than celebrating dad's grilling abilities or neckties collection. I know that's what the commercials tell us to get, dad. Dads, if you're listening, or listeners of dads, do not get the dad in your life whiskey rocks. Do not get them those. They are terrible gifts. Whiskey rocks, these little stone things that you put in the freezer.
I've heard of them.
Why
are you not a fan?
They're gimmicky. They're kitschy. They do nothing.
They don't make your drink cold without watering it down?
No. A little bit of water, an ice cube will help in whiskey, whereas whiskey rock adds nothing. It'd be better used as a slingshot object.
All right.
So
duly noted.
Don't get whiskey rocks. Sorry for the no. You know what? I'm not sorry for the tangent. That is completely relevant. Father's Day is coming. Don't do the whiskey rocks. Just don't.
What you can do is do like the 2-inch silicone, you know, ice cubes, or maybe the spherical ones.
Boom. Yeah. The spherical ones are really good. Yeah. We're rocking some 2-inch ice cubes today. That you busted out the big ones.
Yeah.
I like that. That was good. Anyways, fathers that are breaking that cycle. You like a little ash in your bourbon, right?
Yeah. It's
Sweet.
good. It's tasty.
Makes you more manly, I guess.
Exactly.
But fathers, fathers that are kind of changing the trajectory of their legacy for the better, here's to you guys. Cheers. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. All right. We're drinking some wild turkey to you guys. And fathers that are continuing to work to change their legacy, we're drinking some whiskey for you guys. And fathers that want to do that, that don't know how to do that, we're going to drink some whiskey for you. We're going to pray for you. Reach out to us. We don't have all the answers, but we'd love to give you what we know.
There you go.
Yeah.
We touched on a lot of things today. We could do like 12 tangent episodes off of the things we covered today.
We might need to do an episode on divorce,
Legacy.
marriage. We might need to do 3 episodes on divorce. Man, that'll be an interesting one because we'll eventually get there.
Eventually get there.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a happy Father's Day. No whiskey racks. Peace.